My own son kicked my wheelchair so hard the metal shook like a trapped scream, and my body almost toppled over in front of strangers. The impact threw me against the grocery store shelf, and for a second, I saw my reflection on the shiny floor. A 64-year-old woman who had always lifted everyone else up, but was now being knocked down by the only son she once carried in her arms. The physical pain was nothing compared to what came after. His look, cold, impatient. Ashamed of me, not of what he'd done. My purse slipped from my hands, everything scattered across the floor. People stopped and stared, but no one came closer. A heavy silence took over the aisle, the kind of silence that makes your heart shake. I heard someone whisper, "That's his mother." And that sentence cut deeper than the fall, because I knew this wasn't the first time I was treated like dead weight, just the first time the world watched. I tried to reach for my purse, but my hands were shaking too much. The floor was cold. The world felt too big for me. And my son was walking away, not even looking back. In that exact moment, I understood that the real fall hadn't happened at the store. It had been happening for years, and I only noticed when I finally hit the ground. And today, I'm going to tell you who truly picked me up, and why my son never imagined what would come next. Before we go on, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Before that Sunday at the grocery store, my life had been shrinking in silence. I used to be a woman with a steady stride, who went downtown on her own, who did the shopping carrying 2 bags without complaining. But after the fall on the wet stairs, when I lost mobility in my legs, my steps turned into wheels, and my wheels turned into dependence. A dependence I never asked for, but learned to accept so I wouldn't be a burden. My home always smelled like fresh coffee and mild soap in the mornings. I kept everything organized, even with difficulty. There were old photos on the shelf. Daniel as a little boy, smiling with 2 missing teeth. Daniel in his first school uniform. Daniel hugging me at his 7th birthday. I'd look at those photos and try to find in them some sign of the man he became. Sometimes I did. Sometimes I didn't. Daniel was never patient. As a teenager, he would grumble at the slightest request. As an adult, he'd say he had too much on his mind. I always took it as a phase, as work stress, as exhaustion. That's what mothers do. We invent reasons to excuse what hurts. And without noticing, we let small acts of disrespect become routine. After the accident, he became my only practical support. And even then, he came less and less. He'd only show up when he needed to swing by quickly, like someone checking off a chore. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't sit and eat with me. He didn't talk. Sometimes I'd try to tell him something about my day, and he'd answer while checking the time. Even so, when he invited me to go to the grocery store that Sunday, my heart believed it would be different, that maybe it was a gesture of reaching out, that maybe we'd go back to being mother and son, not caregiver and burden. But in the car, while he drove with his jaw clenched and the radio turned off, something inside me shook. An old memory ran through me. Daniel, still a little boy, holding my hand tight, afraid of losing me in the store. And there I was, years later, realizing that maybe he was the one who had already gotten lost from me. The store was crowded that Sunday, but to me it felt like a distant place, as if I were moving through an unfamiliar scene. The bright white lights reflected off the polished floor, creating a harsh glare. Daniel walked ahead of me at a fast pace, pushing the cart like he was eager to finish everything before anyone noticed he was with me. I tried to keep up in my wheelchair, weaving around carts, legs, kids running. The smell of fresh fruit mixed with packaged meat brought back memories of when I shopped happily on my own, with mobility. Now, every few feet felt like a silent battle. In the pasta aisle, the corner of my purse slid off my lap. A small fall, a small noise, but for me, it felt like the world collapsing in slow motion. The purse fell open, spilling a card holder, an old photo of baby Daniel, a worn lipstick, a pack of tissues. I leaned forward, but my hands trembled. My body no longer followed the will of my independence. "Daniel, could you grab that for me?" I asked, voice low. He turned slowly, with that look I'd known since his teenage years, the look of someone annoyed by another person's very existence. It was a look that said more than any words could. Cold, impatient, unkind. "Again?" he muttered, rubbing his face. I tried to explain, but there was no time. He kicked the wheel of my wheelchair. Not a light kick, not an accidental bump. A kick full of frustration, like he was punishing an object blocking his way. The metal vibrated under me, and the chair slid backward, slamming into the cereal display. The impact shot through my spine, and for a second the world spun. Boxes fell to the floor. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." And then the silence came. A sharp silence. A silence that doesn't comfort. Judges. The kind of silence that lets you know there are witnesses to your humiliation. My first reaction wasn't pain, it was shame. A shame so deep it burned like fever. A woman put her hand to her chest, shocked. A man shook his head. A store employee froze in the aisle. Everyone saw, everyone felt it, but no one stepped forward. Daniel turned away, embarrassed by the judgment around him, but not by what he'd done to me. "Hurry up, you slow everything down," he said, walking toward the parking lot. I looked at my fallen purse, at the old photo of Daniel smiling with 2 missing teeth. And I realized that smile had nothing to do with the man who had just left me there. I reached out. My hands failed. My body wavered. The chair tilted. The world flipped. And I fell. I hit the cold, hard, impersonal floor. Fell in a way no mother should ever fall, because of her own son's impulse. And as the chill of the tiles seeped into my skin, one question echoed inside me. When did I lose the right to be treated like a person? The grocery store floor was cold, almost abrasive, and for an instant I felt trapped between 2 realities. The pain from the fall and a much older pain I'd been pushing aside in silence. I tried to turn a little, but my arm throbbed as if it remembered the accident that put me in the wheelchair. The white light above me looked even harsher from down there. I wasn't just a customer who had fallen. I was a sad spectacle people avoided looking at for more than 2 seconds. I heard footsteps approach, then move away. A woman murmured, "Someone should help her." But no one crouched down. No one touched my shoulder. No one said, "I'm here." Indifference hurts more than impact. And in that moment, I felt the weight of all the years I'd refused to see what was right in front of me. My breathing turned short, shaky. The smell of floor cleaner mixed with the warm scent of fresh bread from the bakery. That smell always reminded me of my mother, waiting for me with a sweet roll in the afternoons. It was the smell of care, a kind of care I hadn't felt in a long time. A tear escaped, not because of the fall, but because of the absence of that sort of love in my present life. I tried reaching for my fallen purse. The photo of baby Daniel lay face up on the floor, staring at me like it belonged to another life. A life where he called me my mom, with pride, not a problem with coldness. The movement made my rib pulse with pain, and I let out a soft groan no one heard. The world moved around me, rolling carts, hurried footsteps, uncomfortable whispers. I was part of the scenery, not a person, and that truth split something inside me. I looked around, searching for Daniel. Nothing. Just the echo of his gesture, the kick, the disdain, the escape. A question sliced through my mind. If I fainted right there, would he come back? Or would he keep driving, angry, complaining about traffic, while I lay on the floor until someone eventually swept the aisle? The truth hit sharp. I already knew the answer. As I tried pushing myself up on my elbow, something rolled toward me. A can someone knocked over as they passed too close. It hit my arm and kept rolling. No apology, no pause. And in that tiny negligence, I saw the reflection of the much larger neglect that had followed me for years. The world seemed determined to keep me where I was, down. But something inside me, even weak, even wounded, refused to accept that this was my final story. I found myself trying, using whatever strength remained, to pull my body into a better position. I needed to feel I still had control of something, even if only of my own movement. And in that small, fragile effort, I heard footsteps. Different footsteps. Firm, steady, deliberate. Not startled, not hurried. Footsteps that carried purpose. Footsteps coming toward me. Footsteps that would not turn away. And for the first time since I'd fallen, my heart responded with something that wasn't fear. Hope. The footsteps drew closer, firm, but with a subtle pause between each step, as if the person were measuring the space with respect, not haste. I was still on the floor, propped awkwardly on my side, trying to lift my torso when his shadow blocked the harsh grocery store lights above me. A strange relief washed over my chest, like the world had finally noticed I existed. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice calm, no shock, no judgment. I lifted my eyes and saw a tall man, simply dressed with a short beard and sun-worn skin. He didn't flinch when he saw me on the ground like the others did. Instead, he lowered himself to my level, looking directly into my eyes with a sincerity I hadn't seen in years. "Let's take it slow," he said, bringing his hands closer, but waiting for my signal. "Can I help you?" I nodded, still unable to find my voice. He slid an arm gently behind my back, supporting my weight as if I were made of glass. Glass he respected, not feared. He lifted me carefully, placed me back into my wheelchair, and held it steady until I was balanced. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice shaky. "My son, I couldn't finish. The sentence stuck to my throat, heavy and humiliating. He understood, and he didn't ask. Instead, he collected my purse with quiet attention. He picked up every item from the floor one by one: the lipstick, the wallet, the floral tissue pack, the old photo of baby Daniel. He held the photo a moment longer, as if sensing its weight, and then placed it in my lap with care. "My name's Jonah," he said. "I work nearby. I saw you fall while unloading a truck." I breathed deeply, trying to steady the tremor in my hands. No one came," I whispered, as if confessing a secret shame. Jonah looked around, reading the room and finding only silent complicity. "People get scared to get involved sometimes," he said, though his tone made it clear he didn't think that excuse was acceptable. A store employee approached hesitantly, asking if I needed an ambulance. I said no. My body hurt, yes. But this wasn't ambulance pain. It was history pain, accumulated pain, long-term pain. "Do you want me to call someone in your family?" Jonah asked. The question was simple, but it hit like a punch. I hesitated. He noticed, and in that silence, something became too obvious. I had no one to call. "No," I answered. "No one would come." Jonah exhaled softly, and that alone broke something inside me. There was compassion there, not pity, compassion. "I'll stay with you until you feel steady again," he said. "You don't owe me anything. It's just the right thing to do." And in that moment, after the kick, the fall, the humiliation, I didn't feel invisible anymore. Because someone had finally seen more than the woman on the floor. He had seen the woman as a whole. Jonah pushed my wheelchair slowly through the aisles while I tried to understand what he truly meant in that moment. He wasn't just someone who lifted me off the floor. He was someone who saw me. For a woman who'd spent years being treated like a burden, that meant more than words could hold. When we reached the area near the parking lot, he stopped my chair by a wall so I could breathe without people rushing past. The air there was cooler, and a soft draft brushed my face, carrying a faint eucalyptus scent from the trees outside. It reminded me of the lotion I used back when I still walked, when I had small routines that didn't depend on anyone. "Are you feeling a bit better?" Jonah asked, leaning slightly toward me but keeping a respectful distance. "I'm trying," I answered. He nodded gently. He didn't minimize it. He didn't say, "You'll be fine." He simply accepted it. "What your son did," he began, choosing his words carefully. "That didn't come out of nowhere, did it?" My chest tightened. He saw more than I said. "It's been years," I admitted quietly. "But today was too much." Jonah stayed silent for a few seconds, the kind of silence that honors pain. And yes, it felt like grief. Grief over a relationship I'd been trying to keep alive, even as it hollowed me out. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Carmen." "Carmen," he repeated, as if storing the name somewhere safe. "You don't deserve to be treated like that. Not today. Not ever." Those words were simple, but enormous. Women my age carry whole lives on their backs. We swallow hurt to not be a bother, We excuse cruelty out of habit. What he said reached a place I'd buried from myself. Your son, Jonah continued. He doesn't see what he has, but I did. I saw you on the ground. I saw how you tried to get up alone. I saw that you didn't shout, didn't make a scene. You carry a dignity he doesn't recognize. My eyes burned. I didn't cry, but they burned. Jonah, why did you stay? I asked. So many people walked by, but you stayed. He took a slow breath, and I sensed there was a story there. Because I know that kind of silence, he said. The silence of someone who wants help, but has grown too tired of being ignored. His words opened a door inside me. I saw my mother on that floor, he added quietly. And this time, I wasn't going to walk away. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was sacred. Carmen, Jonah said at last, if you want, I'll stay with you until your son comes back, or I can walk you to your car, or take you home to make sure everything's okay. Anything you need. You don't have to decide right now. I just want you to know you're not alone. Alone. A word that had been my shadow for years. But for the first time, it didn't cling to me. Because with Jonah standing beside me, I realized something that would change everything. I didn't have to return to the world alone, even if my own son had left me there. Jonah pushed my wheelchair toward the store exit. The sun in the parking lot hit my eyes, bright, almost harsh, but nothing compared to what awaited me. Daniel was leaning against the car, scrolling through his phone as if he'd been waiting for hours, annoyed, impatient, completely detached from what had just happened to me. When he saw us approaching, his expression changed, not to concern, but to embarrassment. Not because of me, because of Jonah. What's this? He asked, straightening up. Who's this guy? Jonah didn't answer right away. He kept pushing my chair until I was in the shade beside the car, steady and safe. His calmness seemed to provoke Daniel even more. Daniel had always dominated through noise. Jonah dominated through silence. I asked who you are, Daniel repeated, harsher this time. Someone who helped your mother, Jonah finally replied, steady, measured. She fell, alone. Daniel let out a short, mocking laugh. She always falls, always causes a scene, nothing new. That sentence struck me like a slammed door. The way he dismissed my pain, made my frailty my fault, turned my humiliation into routine. Jonah inhaled slowly, holding back his own outrage. There was no scene, Jonah said. There was abandonment. Daniel stepped forward, pointing a finger at him. Stay out of it. This is family business. Family doesn't treat a mother like that, Jonah replied, as unshakable as stone. The air thickened. I felt Daniel tremble, not from remorse, but from wounded pride. You don't know what I deal with, Daniel yelled. I work all day, I do everything alone, and she just gets in the way. Those words sliced into the deepest part of me. Jonah stepped forward, not aggressively, but with presence. Gets in the way? He said, staring into Daniel's eyes. She didn't get in the way when she dropped everything to take care of you when you were sick. She didn't get in the way when she paid your rent your first year working. She didn't get in the way when she stayed up late waiting for you to come home. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't expect anyone to know those things he conveniently forgot. That's enough, he muttered. Get in the car, Mom. For years, I would have obeyed. All he had to do was ask, and I always gave in. But something inside me was shifting. The cold grocery store floor still lived in my body. The shame still clung to my skin. I took a breath and for the first time without trembling, said, Not yet. Daniel spun toward me, stunned. What? I said not yet. His expression collapsed. Jonah stayed beside me, steady, silent, a kind of invisible shield. And in that moment, I knew this conversation would not go the way it always had, and I would not be the woman I had always been. The drive home felt like a tunnel with no air. The car moved too fast, and Daniel gripped the steering wheel as if he could crush the uncomfortable truth between his fingers. The silence wasn't just wordlessness, it was distance. A distance built over years, made of small impatiences I chose to ignore so I wouldn't lose my son entirely. I watched the city pass through the window. Shops I used to visit before the accident. Sidewalks I once walked without fear. Trees I passed on my way to work. Everything felt far away now, as if I were just a passenger in my own life. "What you did back there," Daniel finally said, breaking the silence. "It was ridiculous." My stomach sank. "Ridiculous?" I echoed, barely audible. "You're always dropping things," he muttered. "And that guy helping, you just make me look bad." Make him look bad. The word shame echoed inside me like a stone thrown into a deep well. I had spent years making sure I never embarrassed him. I always tried to make his life easier, always told him it's okay, even when it wasn't. And suddenly, there it was, the truth I'd been afraid to name. He didn't see me as a mother. He saw me as a burden. A memory punched through me. Daniel, at 5 years old, tripping on the sidewalk. I scooped him up instantly, wiped his scraped knees, whispered, "You're safe." He calmed in my arms like I was the only shelter he knew. But now, I was the one on the ground, and he was the one turning away. Daniel slammed his fist against the steering wheel. "I already have too much going on, Mom. I can't spend my life taking care of you." His tone was cold, almost rehearsed. But what hurt wasn't the can't. It was the truth behind it. He meant don't want to. I breathed slowly, trying not to let the pain rise into my ribs. "Daniel," I whispered, "I didn't choose to need help." He laughed, a short, irritated laugh. "Yeah, well, that doesn't change anything, does it?" The words fell like a verdict I'd been postponing for years. When we finally reached my building, he parked too fast. He stepped out and took my wheelchair from the trunk with rough movements. He set it beside the car without looking at me. He placed me into it the way someone puts an object down. No care, no connection. "There," he said. "Take care of yourself. I can't keep solving everything for you." He didn't ask if I could get upstairs alone. He didn't ask if I was in pain. He didn't ask if I needed help through the door. He simply turned his back. The building gate closed behind him with a final sounding metallic thud. I stayed there in the lobby for a few seconds, frozen, trying to understand how the boy I once carried could look at me with such emptiness. And in that quiet lobby, smelling of clean floors and faint detergent, the truth finally formed clearly. The fall at the grocery store wasn't the first. I had been falling for years, just in silence. I wheeled myself toward the elevator. My hands trembled, but not from fear this time. It was something else. Clarity. When I reached my apartment, a new certainty settled inside me. I wasn't just hurt, I was awake. When the apartment door closed behind me, the silence sounded different. Not the usual quiet of living alone, but a silence filled with everything I'd never said, everything I'd swallowed to keep a fragile peace. I wheeled myself slowly through the hallway, each movement sending a small pulse of pain through my rib, a reminder of the fall. But the deeper ache was something else entirely. The realization that I had been surviving, not living. The living room looked the same as before. Curtains half open, letting in stripes of light, the old tablecloth I inherited from my mother, the framed photo of little Daniel sitting in my lap, his small hands cupping my face. That photo used to warm me, but that afternoon, the warmth didn't come. There was only a strange emptiness. A question I had avoided for years. At what moment did we lose each other? I ran my fingers along the frame, remembering the scent of baby powder on him, how he'd cling to me as if I were his entire world. I had guarded those memories like treasures, because they were the only pieces left of the love I believed still existed. I wheeled into the kitchen. The kettle felt impossibly heavy. I reached for it, and pain flared through my shoulder. The fall was taking its toll. My hands trembled as I tried to grip the handle, and I released it before it slipped. I shut my eyes, breathed, tried not to let frustration spill into tears. Then I reached for the floral scarf on the table. My mother gave it to me when I was 20, heading to my first job interview. "Go with courage," she'd said. "And if the world turns you upside down, hold on to whatever reminds you who you are." For so many years, it was just a keepsake. Today, it was an anchor. As I held it, something inside me aligned. I realized the pain of that day didn't start in the store. It had deep roots. Roots I'd pretended not to see. A memory surfaced. I came home exhausted when Daniel was 22, my legs hurting, and asked him to help carry the groceries. He sighed loudly, grabbed 2 bags, and left the rest on the floor, saying he had things to do. I laughed it off back then. Now I see it. A warning sign. A tiny disrespect that grew into a pattern. Patterns become walls. While these thoughts spun inside me, I heard footsteps outside, then 3 soft knocks. Not hurried, not demanding, gentle, like someone asking permission to re-enter my world. For a moment I froze. My breath caught. Who could it be? Daniel would never knock like that. That rhythm. I recognized it. I wheeled to the door and opened it slowly. Jonah stood there, holding a bag of fruit and a few wrapped items. His expression wasn't intrusive. It was caring. Attentive. "Good afternoon, Ms. Carmen," he said softly. "Just wanted to check if you got home okay." My chest tightened in a way that wasn't pain. It was recognition. Someone had come back. Someone remembered. Someone cared. And in that moment, I knew the change happening in me wasn't just external. It was internal. Deep. Long overdue. Something inside me was waking up. Something I thought I'd lost with my last fall. Jonah walked into my apartment with a carefulness that felt almost sacred. He didn't rush to touch anything or rearrange my world. Instead, he paused first, observing, understanding, respecting the space before offering help. He set the grocery bag on the counter and unpacked things gently. A few fruits, a soft loaf of bread, a calming tea, and a small eucalyptus-scented candle. "I bought this candle," he said, a little shy, "because I thought the smell might help you relax." Simple gestures can be enormous. That one nearly split me in half. No one had thought about my comfort this thoughtfully in years, perhaps decades. As he organized the items, I watched the way his hands moved. Strong hands, used to work, but so careful with everything they touched. It struck me then. He wasn't just helping. He was familiar with caring. Not the performative kind, the lived kind, the kind shaped by loss. "Jonah," I murmured, still holding my scarf. "What happened with your mother? It was hard, wasn't it?" He stopped, not stiff from pain, but in a pause of respect for his own story. "It was," he said quietly. "She got really sick at the end, and the family, they drifted away. Promised visits that never happened. I did what I could, but I was working long hours. And by the time I realized how little time was left, it was too late." He didn't cry. But his eyes carried the weight of a man who had lived regret. "I wasn't there on her last day," he continued, voice tightening. "And that stays with me." The room fell into a deep, meaningful silence. "Do you know why I came back today?" Jonah asked, looking at me with a clarity that felt like truth laid bare. "Because when I saw you on that floor, something inside me screamed, loud, like I was seeing my mother again, like I had a second chance to do what I couldn't do for her." My throat tightened. 2 griefs meeting in the same room, his and mine, created something unexpectedly healing. "Jonah," I whispered, "you didn't have to come." He stepped closer, placing one hand gently on the back of my chair, close enough to support, far enough not to overwhelm. "Sometimes we do things not because we have to," he said, "but because we should." He then examined my home the way a carpenter assesses what needs reinforcing. The narrow hallway, the shelf too high, the phone too far from the bed. Nothing escaped him. "Can I help you with some adjustments?" he asked. "Only if you want. Just noticed a few things that could make your days easier." I nodded, not out of helplessness, but out of permission. For the first time in a long time, I wanted help. He lowered a shelf, repositioned the rug so my chair wouldn't catch, and set water to boil for tea, as if he'd always known how to move inside my space without disturbing it. As he worked, I noticed scars and calluses on his hands, marks of hard labor. Yet every motion he made around me was full of gentleness. "Carmen," he said when he finished adjusting the kitchen bar, "you're not alone. Not truly. Not while I can be here." The words didn't hit me like comfort. They hit me like truth. Not a promise, a presence. And as Jonah changed small things around the house, I realized the real transformation wasn't happening in the space. It was happening in me. Sometimes the person who lifts you up isn't the one who owes you love, but the one who sees you. Jonah had just finished tightening the grab bar by the kitchen doorway when we heard 3 sharp knocks at the door. Not polite, not hesitant, not curious. Knocks that carried impatience. Knocks I knew by heart. My chest tightened. My hands trembled instinctively. Daniel. Jonah looked at me, silently asking for permission. I inhaled slowly, nodded. He opened the door. Daniel walked in like a storm breaking through a window. No greeting, no pause, no awareness of anything except his own rising anger. His eyes landed on Jonah and the scowl came instantly. "What's he doing here?" he demanded, pointing. Jonah didn't flinch. He simply stood where he was, steady, calm, grounded. "He's helping me," I said, before Jonah could answer. My voice felt strangely steady, like it had found a spine I didn't know I still had. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Helping," he repeated. "Mom, this man doesn't belong here. He doesn't know you. He doesn't know us. He shouldn't be in our home acting like some kind of hero." The word hero wasn't praise. It was accusation. Jonah crossed his arms, not in threat, but in certainty. "I'm not playing anything," he said calmly. "I'm doing what a son would do." The silence that followed cracked open like ice. Daniel stiffened. His expression flickered from anger to something closer to panic. "Watch what you say," he hissed. "You don't know a damn thing about us." Jonah held his gaze, unshaken. "I know enough," he said. "I know I saw your mother on the floor, alone, while you were walking away." Daniel stepped forward sharply, chest puffed, ready to intimidate like he always had. But Jonah didn't retreat. And when a man used to dominating meets someone who doesn't play by those rules, something shifts. "You don't know what I deal with," Daniel snapped. "I do everything alone. I'm the one who carries this family. I'm the one responsible for everything. And she," he pointed at me without looking, "constantly drags me down." Those words stabbed through the room. Sharp, cruel, practiced. Jonah's jaw tightened. "She didn't drag you down," he said. "She raised you, supported you, sacrificed for you. She carried you long before you ever had the chance to return anything." Daniel's eyes darted between us, and I saw something new in him. Not guilt, not remorse, but fear. Fear of losing control. "Enough," he shouted. "Enough of this. Mom, get your stuff. We're leaving. Now." He expected me to obey. I always did. But the cold floor of that supermarket was still inside me. The humiliation still clung to my skin. The truth was louder than his voice. "Not yet," I said softly. Daniel blinked like he hadn't heard me. "What?" I steadied myself, looked him in the eyes. I said, "Not yet." His disbelief cracked into anger. "You're choosing him over me? This stranger? This nobody?" Jonah didn't move, didn't react. He just stayed beside me, a quiet wall of support. "I'm not choosing him," I said. "I'm choosing me." Daniel's mouth fell open. His anger faltered, replaced by confusion, by a loss of the power he always held over me. Jonah stepped slightly closer, not to confront Daniel, but to stand with me. And right then, something irreversible happened. Daniel didn't break. I did. Out of the shell he kept me in. I wasn't the same woman who left that supermarket floor, and Daniel could see it. His voice, once booming, shrank to a whisper of disbelief. "What's happening to you?" Everything, I thought. Everything I'd been afraid to allow. Everything I'd needed for years. I didn't say those words aloud, but the silence between us delivered them for me. After Daniel left, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled, I just stared at the empty hallway. For years, that sound had meant I'd failed him somehow, that I needed to fold myself smaller, apologize faster, accept blame that wasn't mine. But this time, there was no collapse inside me, only exhaustion, and a strange, steady clarity. Jonah closed the door gently, as if sealing out the chaos Daniel had tried to drag back in. He pulled a chair up in front of me and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. His eyes weren't pitying. They were respectful. "Carmen," he said quietly, "you were strong today." I let out a shaky breath. "Strong? I feel broken." He shook his head. "Sometimes breaking is exactly what lets you rebuild yourself." Those words hovered in the room, heavy but true. I looked around my apartment. The crooked picture frame on the wall, the removed rug, the new grab bar, the shelf Jonah had lowered. Little changes that hinted at something bigger. A life that didn't rely on Daniel's moods. A life shaped for me, not around someone else's convenience. "Jonah," I whispered, my fingers brushing the edge of my scarf. "I need to change my life. Even if it's slow, even if it's small. I can't keep living like this." He nodded once, calmly, as if he'd been waiting for me to say it. "What do you need?" I opened the drawer of the old cabinet beside me and pulled out a hardcover notebook. Faded, the pages yellowed. I used to jot down recipes in it when Daniel was little. It smelled like time, like things that survive. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote, "Things I need to live without fear." My hand trembled, but not with weakness, with intention. I wrote, "Grab bars in the bathroom, no rugs to trip over. Phone close to the bed, wider path in the hallway. A routine that doesn't depend on my son's mood. People who see me seeing myself." When I finished, Jonah took the notebook carefully, reading in silence. Then he handed it back. "I can help with 4 of these," he said. "And for the rest, I'll be here while you figure them out." My breath loosened, like something unclenching in my chest. "But Jonah," I murmured, "why are you doing all this for me?" He looked down at my hands, then at my face, and answered with a sincerity so clean it almost hurt. "Because I once wished someone had done this for my mother, and because you deserve it. Not because of what you can do, not because of what you've done, but because you're human. And no human deserves to fall alone." My throat tightened. He stood and started moving through the house with purpose, removing the hallway rug completely, measuring where the next bar should go, adjusting the cabinet height, making sure the wheelchair moved smoothly through every doorway. Each small change felt like a wall inside me collapsing. Not into ruin, into space. A space where I could breathe, where I wasn't depending on someone who resented me, where I could choose my life again. The counterattack wasn't revenge. It was rebuilding. And as the home slowly reshaped itself around my needs, one truth grew clearer and clearer. I had never been as alone as Daniel wanted me to believe. The next morning felt ordinary on the surface, but something in the air had shifted. I was sitting by the window when the intercom buzzed. Once, then again, faster, almost frantic. When I answered, a voice I recognized came through. Daniel. But not the Daniel who barked orders or wore impatience like armor. This voice was trembling. Open the door, please, right now." My heart clenched, not out of fear, but out of a strange, unfamiliar anticipation. Jonah had come early to finish installing the bathroom bar. He glanced at me, reading my expression instantly. I nodded. He stayed behind me as I opened the door. Daniel rushed in. His hair was messy, his face pale, his eyes red, and he was holding his phone like it was burning his hand. "Mun, you saw this? Tell me you didn't see it. Tell me you didn't." I frowned, confused. Then he turned the screen toward me. A video. The video. Me on the supermarket floor. My chair knocked sideways, groceries scattered, people staring, and Daniel, walking away. The kick looked even harsher on camera. The metal clanged, my body jolted. The shame froze on my face. Every detail was captured, every second undeniable. The clip had millions of views. Millions. "Mine?" His voice cracked. "This went viral. I got called into a meeting. They let me go. I lost my job. Everything. People are calling me a monster, a criminal. You have to help me." He sat on the couch like he'd been hit by a truck. Jonah stood behind me like a silent anchor. "Mon, please," Daniel begged. "Please tell them it wasn't like that. Tell them you slipped. Tell them you exaggerated. Tell them anything. His desperation filled the room, dripping through every word. But I kept watching the video. Not the fall, not the silence afterward. I watched him. The way he shoved his frustration into my wheelchair, the way he walked off without hesitation, the way he didn't even turn back. And suddenly I wasn't looking at the man in the video. I was looking at a lifetime of tiny abandonments. "Say something," Daniel pleaded, grabbing my wrist. "You owe me that." Those words struck deep, not because they were true, but because they revealed everything. "I owe you?" I repeated quietly. "Yes," he snapped. "I'm your son. You're supposed to protect me." I held his gaze. "And I protected you," I said softly. "Every day of your childhood, every night you were sick, every struggle you had. I never let you fall." He swallowed hard, unable to respond. "But you," I continued, "you didn't just let me fall. You left me on the floor." His jaw tightened. "I was stressed," he shouted. "I'm overwhelmed. I have a life." I nodded slowly. "I know. And I never asked you to give it up. I only ever asked for respect." He looked at me like I was speaking a language he didn't understand. "Mine, please," he whispered. "If you don't defend me, I'm finished." At that, Jonah stepped forward, not imposing, but present. "This isn't about finishing," he said quietly. "It's about accountability." Daniel glared at him. "You stay out of this." But Jonah didn't move. "Your mother doesn't owe you a lie," he said. "She doesn't owe you her silence." I felt my spine straighten, not physically, but in the place inside me I thought had collapsed years ago. "Daniel," I said, "I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to fix what you did. That's yours to carry." He stared at me, stunned. "Mine. So you're choosing him over me." I shook my head gently. "I'm choosing me." And something broke in him. Not loudly, not dramatically. Something small. Something real. He looked down, defeated. For the first time, Daniel wasn't the center of the room. I was. He stood slowly, walked to the door, and paused, hand trembling on the handle. "I never thought you'd turn your back on me," he said. "I didn't," I replied. "You turned yours first." He left quietly. And as the door clicked shut, not slammed, just closed, something rose inside me like a breath I'd been holding for years. I had finally stood up, not from the floor, from my silence. When Daniel walked out and the door clicked softly behind him, not angry, not dramatic, just final. I felt the kind of silence that marks the end of a long, painful chapter. It wasn't grief, and it wasn't relief. It was truth settling into the room like dust after a storm. Jonah stayed by my side, not rushing to speak, not filling the air with empty reassurances. He understood the weight of that moment, the weight of letting go of the version of someone you loved, even when that version never truly existed. "You did the hardest part," Jonah said quietly, "the most honest part." I exhaled slowly. My breathing felt foreign, like my ribs were expanding into a space I had never allowed myself to occupy. "Jonah, I never thought I'd be able to say those things to him," I admitted. "Courage doesn't happen all at once," he said. "It grows inside the cracks life leaves behind, until one day, it breaks the silence." His words wrapped around me gently, like a blanket that had been waiting years to be unfolded. I wheeled myself toward the living room table and touched the old framed photo of Daniel as a child. His little hands on my cheeks, his smile wide and innocent. I didn't feel anger anymore. Anger had burned out long ago. What was left was a softer ache. The ache of a mother mourning the hopes she once had. Not the child, the hopes. "What happens now?" I asked, half to Jonah, half to myself. He pulled a chair up beside me. "Now, life becomes what you choose," he said. "Not what someone else demands, not what someone else resents, what you choose." Those words didn't just land, they rooted. We spent the rest of the afternoon adjusting small things around the apartment. Jonah lowered the telephone, moved a water pitcher where I could reach it easily, secured another grab bar near the bathroom. Every one of his actions seemed to say, "You matter, your comfort matters, your safety matters." Messages I hadn't heard in years. When he finished, he placed a steady hand over mine. Not possessive, not overstepping, just present. "Anything you need," he said. "I'm here." Not because I have to be, because I want to be. After he left, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt mine. For the first time in a long, long while, I looked at my reflection in the window. Not the wheelchair, not the wounds, not the age. I saw a woman who had survived disappointment, silence, and neglect, and still found strength to rise from a place she thought she'd never escape. I didn't stand on my legs. I stood in my spirit, and that was enough. 3 months have passed since the day my son kicked my wheelchair in public, and in that time, something profound has changed. Not in the world around me, but inside me. My home looks different now. Grab bars installed, clear paths, everything placed where I can reach it. But the biggest transformation isn't in the furniture or the layout. It's in the way I exist inside my own life. I learned that autonomy isn't about doing everything alone. It's about having the right to choose who walks beside you. And for the first time in decades, I chose myself. Daniel reached out a few times, not with rage this time, but with a heavy silence I recognized as late regret. Life had shown him, in the hardest way, something I tried to teach with kindness. Respect isn't owed, it's built. And when you treat a mother like a burden, eventually the weight shifts to you. I listened to him, calmly, without yelling, without bitterness, but also without stepping backward into the place I once lived, where my dignity bent to fit his mood. I didn't deny my love, but I didn't deny my pain either. Jonah, on the other hand, became a steady presence, not a rescuer, not a replacement, but someone who chose to stay. He didn't fill a void, he honored a space. He brought warm coffee on cold afternoons, fixed things I had long given up on, and sat with me when silence felt too big. Slowly, I realized the truth I had been too afraid to claim. That fall in the supermarket wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my awareness. The fall showed me the ground. The ground showed me who would lift me, and who never should have let me fall. If you're listening to me now, take this with you. We are never too old to reclaim our dignity, never too late to choose ourselves, never too late to stop carrying those who only know how to push. And now I want to ask you something. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear a truth like this. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what part of this journey spoke to your heart? I'll read every message, because here, you are seen.